Good morning. The weekend was filled with people cooling off and enjoying the sun, but the dry monsoon this year has brought about a drought to Korea's agricultural industry. Bodies from the downed Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 are reportedly taken away by pro-Russian separatists in refrigerated train cars as the blame game continues. Another K-pop dance flash mob in a romantic city of France, and a video of a dynamic duo's backpacking trip around Korea. And a young singer takes on the challenge of singing trot, a music style transcending generations, on Korea Today, Monday, July 21st, 2014.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And good morning and welcome to Korea Today on this Monday morning. I'm Kim Min-jung alongside Kim Young and Jin-ju. Wow, it was a scorcher this weekend.
It
right?
was. Ooh, the heat.
Yes, it was.
It was unendurable. Many people might have decided to stay at home with the air conditioner on at full blast, but many people also decided to head to amusement parks or indoor theme parks in particular to fight the heat and avoid the heat.
That's right. One indoor park in particular has a winter theme. So it's basically a snow park, which is indoors, runs 24 hours, not 24, 365 days a year. I'm sorry
That's
about
right.
that. And then guests this weekend got a big surprise, Santa Claus.
Right, I'm sure the little kids were really excited. Unexpected guests showed up from Finland, all the way from Finland as well.
And
I
look at
must
him taking
say,
pictures there.
He looks pretty authentic, right?
Right.
Not that I've seen Santa Claus in person, but yeah, definitely looks cool and definitely Christmassy. I'm sure the little kids just absolutely love that chance, right?
We do have that Korean film Christmas in August, but it was Christmas in July.
In July, that's right. The weather this weekend, though, was anything but Christmassy. It was scorching hot with midday highs soaring past 33 degrees Celsius in Seoul and other major cities on Sunday. Millions of people across the country hit the beaches and swimming pools to cool off and enjoy some water fun. An estimated 1 million people visited the 7 beaches in Korea's southeastern city of Busan, including the Haeundae Beach, while another 1 million swarmed to the Daecheon Beach in Chungcheongnam-do Province, where the 17th Boryang Mud Festival is underway. Meanwhile, in Seoul, the Cheonggyecheon Stream and swimming pools along the Hangang River were popular spots among people looking for some nearby relief from the heat. The provinces of Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Chungcheongbuk-do saw heat wave warnings issued on Sunday, which have been extended through this Monday.
As the main opposition party stepped up its demand for the adoption of what's being dubbed as the Sewol Ferry Law, rival parties are expected to lock horns in July's first extraordinary session at the National Assembly on Monday. The bill is aimed at determining the cause of April's ferry disaster and over whether to give investigative power to a parliamentary inspection team. The proposed law would also outline measures towards providing compensation to the victims and their families. The previously set date was for July 16th, but the rival parties failed thus far to resume negotiations on narrowing their differences. Family members of the victims and several opposition lawmakers have been on a hunger strike, calling for the swift adoption of the special law, requesting enactment by July 24th, which marks the 100th day since the disaster.
South Korea and China have agreed to establish a military hotline between their defense chiefs within this year to strengthen their cooperation. A government official speaking on condition of anonymity said the two sides will finalize their decision during the 4th round of strategic defense dialogue scheduled to take place in China next Tuesday. When established, China will become the second country after the U.S. with which South Korea has a military hotline between defense ministers. The official said this will allow Seoul and Beijing to be in close contact in dealing with key security issues, including military provocations from North Korea. The move is considered significant as Beijing had been reluctant about establishing the hotline, mindful of its relations with traditional ally Pyongyang.
We're usually in the throes of monsoon season by this time of the year in Korea, but things are quite different this year. The inland regions of central Korea in particular are being severely affected by the so-called dry monsoon. And even though parts of the nation saw some precipitation over the weekend, it was nowhere near enough to relieve the ongoing drought. For more, let's connect live with our Kim Chan-ju, who was out at the drought-affected areas to see how bad the conditions are. Good morning, Chan-ju.
Good morning, Chin-ju. I'm standing at the Susongdong Valley of Arirang Mountain, one of the famous locations to visit during summertime in Seoul. As you can see, I'm standing at the bottom of the valley where the water should be filled in full and people should be coming in to enjoy the summer weather and dipping in, etc. But not since the dry spell kicked in the country. Among many areas across the country, central region is suffering the most from this ongoing drought. So I went out to the scene of the drought-affected areas and how they're coping with the serious situation. Chopyeong Reservoir is the biggest reservoir in Chungcheongbuk-do province and a popular fishing spot in the country. The water level started declining in April and now it is nearly completely empty. Fishing boats and fishing floats that are usually visible on the water have all but disappeared.
내가 키가 1m 76인데 내가 파묻힐 정도는
The floor of the reservoir is dry and severely cracked with almost no moisture inside. The reservoir supplies farming water to the Chungcheongbuk-do province region, but the ongoing drought is causing a serious water shortage in this area.
Crops need water the most this time of the year, but we don't have any water to use right now. I have not seen a drought like this in 20 years.
Reservoirs in the country, including Chopyeong Reservoir, are close to being completely dried out to the ground. Water availability across the nation has declined by 20% compared to that of the average amount over the last 30 years. Normally, many vegetables and plants will be in its peak season this time of the year, but that's not the case for many, like this pea patch right here that has not been able to grow properly. Some of them are actually completely dried out like this, and the land is also very dry and cracked up in many places, and that is due to the ongoing heat wave during this summer. The result, a huge damage to the farming industry, particularly local produce like this one. It is a similar story for Cheongpungho Lake, the biggest drinking water source for the inland areas around Korea's central region. The dry spell is expected to affect nearby areas with a shortage of drinking water. This village in the mountains of Jecheon is not equipped with a waterworks system, and 21 households are battling with the water shortage.
We get water from the mountaintop for drinking and residential use, but we ran out of natural water because of the drought. We cannot even spray pesticides in the field because we don't have water.
In particular, a temporary water supply system in the valleys of Susanmyeon in Jecheon City has dried up, and now the village is relying on an emergency water supply from the provincial government. Looking at the rainfall in July over the past 10 years, Seoul has received the lowest rainfall this year, a clear result of this unusual dry monsoon. Considering that the average monsoon season in the central region usually ends on July 25th, there are possibilities of only 1 or 2 chances of precipitation in the capital of Seoul.
When cold air from the north of the peninsula meets with warm air in the south from the North Pacific, the monsoonal front is created. But the cold air has a strong influence this year, preventing warm air from rising. And that's why the monsoonal front is staying around the southern region and Jeju Island, while causing drought in the central region.
The government has decided to step up in finding ways to tackle the dry monsoon issue. Compared to other natural disasters, problems related to drought or flooding tend to spread gradually. Therefore, it is possible to minimize the damage with a contingency plan.
Currently, we make sure to construct reservoirs to cope with 10 years of drought. However, the building standard for reservoirs should be strengthened in order to protect against abnormal climate changes like this one. The best method is to expand the size of reservoirs to secure more water.
The drought is really becoming a serious problem for local communities because, as you said, it's even affecting local businesses with the significant drop in the number of tourists to the areas. But Chanju, I hear that rain is in the forecast starting tomorrow night in the central regions. Would that be of any help?
That's right, Jinju. The rain is in the forecast this week and continuing until this weekend. And yes, much anticipated rainfall will hopefully relieve some dry conditions around the country, including Seoul as well. But a torrential downpour is likely in store. And also we have to see how much precipitation the inland regions of central area will receive this time. Jinju?
And we can't just sit and wait for rain. There must be some active measures put in place. What are some of the government's plans to reduce the impact of this drought?
Well, securing and supplying farming water is essential in rural areas. So Korea Rural Community Corporation says it will supply farming water and as well as offer aid to the affected areas. Also, Korea Water Resources Corporation says the water will be filled up in major dams around the country, and there will be constant cycle of dispelling old water and refilling with new water in an effort to adjust the water level and to supply farming and drinking water. In addition, President Park Geun-hye last week held a briefing session on strategy management of new technology and industry in the face of climate change. During the briefing session, President Park said it is important that the government and private organizations to come together to join efforts in creating and developing new technologies and to draw new countermeasures. And with that, the government plans to be at the forefront in making active responses to combat climate change. Jinju?
Right. Well, let's hope to see more rain this month. Thank you, Chanju, for that report. That was our Kim Chanju reporting live on the current drought affecting the nation.
Good morning. It's time to run through the front pages of your newspapers. We have a couple international headlines making the top stories this morning on the local papers. The biggest news right now, of course, is a downed Malaysian airliner in eastern Ukraine by a surface-to-air missile. Let's begin with that on 중앙일보. And this image and report is together titled Tsar Putin faced with backlash due to missile firing. And what that means is that Russian President Vladimir Putin is being blamed by the international community following the tragedy with the U.S. and Europe, saying that, as we can see here in the sub-headlines, that Putin should be taking responsibility for providing the missile to Russian-backed separatists in Ukraine. If you take a look at the picture, the caption explains that the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe have arrived at the crash site for investigation, but the rebel-held territory has complicated their efforts to determine what exactly caused the crash. Now, bringing things local on Chosunilbo, we'll take a look at the top headline here. The headline says businesses decrease investment despite $27 billion of exemption in corporate tax. And the sub-headline here, it notes that the government had initially expected investment and hiring by companies to increase once they were permitted to pay less corporate taxes. But it turns out that the government was completely wrong about this. If you take a look at this graph here, we'll go into this graph. There has been a gradually increasing drop in tax revenue due to the reduction in the corporate tax rate since 2009. Now, the government has tried to ease businesses with the burden of tax for the past 5 years, with exemption amounts totaling to about $27 billion worth of corporate tax. However, instead of investment and employment increasing, only cash equivalent holdings controlled by these businesses have increased. Thus is why the government has recently proposed to tax corporate cash reserves to trigger investment growth and benefit the economy as a whole, which businesses are against. And next up is Gyeongyang Shinmun for another international headline. Taking a look at this image, another heartbreaking and agonizing situation. This picture is titled Palestinian Families Flee Gaza. Now, thousands of terrified Palestinians fled through the streets of Gaza City on Sunday, escaping Israeli shells which had rained horror and death onto their suburb. Some families rode on the back of donkey carts or piled into cars. As you can see in this image, this is just one family getting ready for their escape. Please do stay tuned for more details on this with global updates coming up in the show. And let's go on to some business news on the Mail Business newspaper. Once again, bringing things local. Now, this headline here on the Mail Business newspaper is called Era of Ultra Low Interest Rate, 1% interest range on deposits soon to come. So now we're advancing into the age of the 1% interest range on fixed deposits, which means you get less than about $100 to $200 in interest after putting in about $10,000 in deposits. Now this chart shows a list of local banks that are all lowering their deposit interest rates. So for instance, if you take a look at the first one, Shinhan Bank has also lowered its interest rate. It's marked down its rate from 2.65 to 2.5%. Now, not only are banks' profitability weakening amid low interest rates, the public is also having an ever more difficult time saving up and handling their financial investment techniques well. And that was a look at your newspaper headlines for this Monday. And now coming up are the stock numbers from Friday.
Now, we did start off the program talking about that massive heat wave that we are continuing to get with late night temperatures hovering at the high 20s. I mean, we're talking about an ultimate discomfort index.
That's right. The index that the government keeps track of hits some 80%. And this is when you can get into small and big altercations with people around you because you're just so annoyed by the heat.
Exactly.
And just, whoa, stay away from me, right?
Thank God for the air conditioning here, or else we'd be butting heads too, right?
That's right. For a closer look at today's weather conditions, our Chun Song-cho is standing by outdoors for us. Let's go over to her right now. Good morning to you, Song-cho.
Good morning, guys. We've been experiencing this sweltering heat wave for the past couple of weeks now, and it's seeming to get even worse. A heat advisory has been issued all across the country in Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Chungcheong-Nambuk-do provinces, especially Gyeongsang-Nambuk-do provinces being the hottest out of all. Heat index values are expected to soar up to 48 degrees Celsius in those areas, so it's going to be seriously hot. Korea Meteorological Administration put out a bulletin to advise people to stay indoors during the hottest time of the day and to consume water as often as possible. We have partly cloudy skies due to a high-pressure system moving away from the peninsula, but strong UV rays and warm, humid air are going to keep the temperatures on the scorching side. And let's take a closer look at the temperature readings. Midday highs in most cities are going to hit the 30s, with Daegu and Gangneung being exceptionally hot at 35 and 34 degrees Celsius. Even lows hover around 23 all across the country, so tropical conditions are going to continue well throughout the night. Another monsoon rain is expected starting from tomorrow night, and this is all for me with the weather forecast. Back to you, Minjung.
Let's now get a check on the international headlines we're following this morning. For that, we'll turn over to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news center. Good morning to you, Eunice.
Good morning, Min-jung.
Let's now get the latest on the Malaysian jetliner that was shot down in Ukraine. There are reports that the plane's black box has been recovered. What do we know so far?
Well, pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine say they've recovered what they're describing as a technical object from the crash site. And based on video captured by Reuters, the orange-colored device workers were holding as they walked through a wheat field in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region looked very much like what a black box would look like. And in that video, one worker called out the words flight recorder in Russian. So we'll have to see, we'll have to wait for that device to be passed on to international monitors to confirm that indeed what you're seeing there in the video is the black box that records, amongst other things, the last voices on the flight. Meanwhile, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte has said that the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which you heard earlier from Sunny, has arrived at the crash site, is negotiating with separatists to bring the train containing bodies from the crash site under Ukrainian government control. Scores of bodies were loaded onto refrigerated train cars yesterday, and the leader of Donetsk People's Republic said that they will hand them over to the International Civil Aviation Organization when its experts arrive.
And in the meantime, the world is mourning the presumed loss of just so many lives on MH Flight 17, people from all walks of life and from all corners of the globe.
That's right. Malaysia Airlines released the full list of the 298 passengers or people on board over the weekend. They were from 11 countries, including nearly 200 from the Netherlands, 43 from Malaysia, and 27 Australians. At least 6 of the passengers were headed to Melbourne to attend the 20th International AIDS Conference, and among them were renowned scholars, AIDS scholars, and a media officer from the World Health Organization. Now, makeshift tributes were created, including one at Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands, remembering the lives lost too soon. Korean President Park Geun-hye also sent her condolences to Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak and Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, offering her condolences to the relatives of those lost in the crash.
And give us the latest on the conflict in the Middle East this time. Sunday was, I believe, the deadliest day so far in the ongoing battle between Israeli and Hamas forces.
Right, and this is coming into our newsroom, Min-jung. We're getting reports that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will head to Egypt to work on a truce agreement between Israel and Hamas. Now, as you mentioned, backed by tanks and warplanes, Israeli troops did escalate their ground offensive this weekend, especially on Sunday, unleashing fire on a crowded Gaza City neighborhood on Sunday. At least 60 Palestinians were killed there in what Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas characterized as a massacre, and thousands were forced to flee to take refuge in UN schools and elsewhere. The United Nations says more than 83,000 Gazans are now displaced and mounting casualties, straining Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital, where authorities say it's facing crisis-level shortages of medical supplies. It was also a deadly day for the Israel Defense Forces, as 13 of their own were killed in an ambush, all members of the Golani Brigade. Sunday's hit brings the total number of Israeli soldiers killed in the offensive to 18. There are also reports that Hamas militants have captured an Israeli soldier, and in all of this context, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowing to continue the offensive, quote, as much as we need to. And with that, we'll wrap your look at the global headlines we're following this morning.
And still ahead, sports fanatics who like an adrenaline rush cannot miss out on what's coming up. Plus, a spicy food challenge that left a man in tears and a trip that took 2 best friends across the country. All of this and much more still coming up on Viral Feed.
Now, medicine, modern-day medicine, it continues to make advancements to this very day. But what about the last 100 years or so, or going back even further? Our Im Yoon-hee joins us with a look at medicine from the Joseon Dynasty. Good morning.
Good morning, Yang. So the Handok Medical Pharma Museum is considered the oldest medical museum to be established here in Korea. Now, recently, they collaborated with the National Palace Museum to create an exhibition that shows you a look at the medical practices used during the Joseon Dynasty on the royal family. Take a look. This white porcelain kettle, topped with this fitted lid, often used with these spoons. These are just a few of the many tools used during the Joseon Dynasty to treat illness and disease. The National Palace Museum is displaying a plethora of precious artifacts from the Joseon Dynasty in an exhibition featuring the tools and equipment that were used by medical practitioners over the 5-century period that ended in the late 1800s. Everything from folding screens, displaying the 10 traditional symbols of longevity, to books holding the age-old secrets for good health and a long life were used to treat the royal family.
This small table was used to hold the porcelain medicine bowls. If you look at the very bottom, you can see a healthy and long life represented through the turtle ornamentation and lotus flower-shaped patterning.
The tools of the trade may look unfamiliar to the doctors of today, but they represent a part of Korea's history and culture that is important to preserve.
During the Joseon Dynasty, the royal family was not safe from disease. So we created this exhibition to show people the richness of the Joseon royal family's daily life.
Although the use for these paintings, tools, and books is long gone, many of them have been marked as national treasures and important folklore cultural heritage items. And each still has so much to offer hundreds of years later.
It's a lot different than what I had expected. I was thinking that I might see some medieval type items that looks like it's painful, but it looks rather peaceful there. Now, you did tell us that they're from the Handok Medical Pharma Museum, and tell us a little bit more about this place.
Right, so the exhibition you just saw at the National Palace Museum, that's dedicated solely to the medical practices of the royal family only, but the Handok Medical Pharma Museum, they do have artifacts that range from, all different kinds of practices across the time span. And so this museum is located in the Chungcheongbuk-do province, and they have over 10,000 artifacts, different artifacts that really give you a glimpse at the history of medicine here in Korea.
And the Chungcheongbuk-do province are filled with mountains, very mountainous area over there, so a lot of people do go over there to cool off, and it might be the perfect place to stop by, maybe learn a thing or two about medical practices from the Joseon Dynasty.
Right. Actually, they're also holding lectures at the National Palace Museum exhibition. For those interested, they're holding lectures to, give you a little bit more insight into what they did, the medical practices of the Joseon Dynasty, and so that might be something that you're interested in as well.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for that report.
Always a pleasure.
And stay with us because still ahead on Korea Today, we're going to be meeting one young man who is actually a member of a multicultural singing group, a performance act, and he's actually a singer of R&B, but he's going to try his hand at trot, which is a music style that's very unique to Korea. So join us on INS&OUTS as we take Filipino Erick Christian Robles into the world of Korean trot.
And time now for News Sum Up. Topping the search list is K-pop boy band Infinite's comeback this weekend.
It's been nearly 2 months since they released their last song, so many fans are quite excited about their comeback. Our Seo Mi-sorang joins us from the digital room to tell us all about it. Good morning to you, Mi-sorang.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. That's right. They made their highly anticipated comeback with a song aptly titled Back. Meanwhile, on Sunday, German football club Bayer Leverkusen and French club Marseille held a pre-season friendly. But the match was anything but friendly as players Son Heung-min and Jeremy Morel got into a fight. The other players and staff also getting involved in the push and shove. Turning to some local business news now, some 30 companies are subject to corporate restructuring programs after the country's top financial regulator gives them a poor credit rating. Moving on, the reason smashing schemes work is because when you receive these scam messages, these smishing messages, they seemingly come from valid and known numbers. So you might think that they're from your friend, the police, or the bank, for example. These are in fact sent by the scammers through the internet, where they can type in any number as the sender. But starting today, you can tell if messages are sent from the internet because they will start with a tag that reads "Sent from web." Meanwhile, if you don't use these internet SMS services at all, you can call your service provider, so SK Telecom or LG U+, for example, and ask them to block your number from being used. And on to our last item of the day. 2 mysterious sinkholes are found in the road that runs in front of the National Assembly Hall. Let's take a look. The first one was discovered last month on June 19th, measuring 3 meters by 3 meters at the surface and 4 in depth. Less than a month later, a second hole is found. This one is smaller though, about a third the size of the first. Workers have been trying to find the cause, physically digging the site and also using radars that can penetrate the ground. Despite these efforts though, there have been no leads so far, and the mystery continues. And with that, it's a wrap-up for today's edition of your Daily News Sum Up.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team, as the KFA announced that the team will play 6 more friendlies before the end of the year. Now, in preparations for the upcoming Asian Cup in Australia taking place in January, the KFA announced that the South Korean national football team will play 6 more times this year. Now, they did add that they'll play 2 matches per month from September to November. And according to an official at the KFA, the first 2 matches will be against South American nations, with Venezuela and Uruguay in talks for the September friendlies. Meanwhile, the KFA hopes to choose their next head coach before the friendlies begin. And now staying with football, but over to some Sunday's K-League Classic action. The Pohang Steelers shut out Busan I-Park 2-0 to keep their first place lead, while the Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors faced off against Sangju Sangmu. So let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, this match was a special match for Chae Eun-sung, who had his retirement ceremony after 532 matches in the K-League, with each player on the Jeonbuk squad wearing 532 on their uniform. But once the match kicked off, it was another Jeonbuk legend who scores the first goal as Lee Dong-guk finds the back of the net in the 17th minute as Jeonbuk takes a 1-0 lead. And then the second half comes along and, hey, why don't we score a little bit more? 5 more goals being scored in the second half by Jeonbuk as they crush Sangju with the final score of 6-0. And now over to badminton, where all eyes were on Sung Ji-hyun after Lee Yong-dae pulled out of the competition over on the men's mixed doubles due to an injury, and she didn't disappoint as she dominated in the finals of the Taiwan Open Grand Prix Gold, winning her second Taiwan Open title. Now, it is the first time that she did win this season since winning the Asian Championships back in April. And so with that, we are going to move over to golf, where the KLPGA Jeju Masters was highlighted by the presence of Park In-bi, who not only played well, but treated the fans with a little something special on the final day. The 26-year-old, holding a 6-iron at par 3, third hole, nails a hole-in-one, first official hole-in-one of her career, leaving the fans in awe. Now, she would finish off the event tied for 4th after shooting a 10 under par overall. Meanwhile, it was the 9th-year Yoon Chae-young who won her first KLPGA title after finishing off the event at 11 under par overall for the emotional victory. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. It is Monday again, and that, of course, means it's time for Viral Feed, where we take a look at some of the hottest stories from the web. Let's get started right away. As you can see, we have a couple of very interesting stories to get to. Here's our first one, though. Now, we have been talking about this unbearable heat, and everyone, of course, has their own way of cooling down. This, though, takes things to a whole new level. Let's have a look.
Now the clip starts off with a Mission Impossible sort of setting. So what's this top secret package that they're trying to acquire? Well, I can scarcely believe it. This. Now this is the newest generation of the flyboard. Now it's called the hoverboard. And yes, the characteristics of this gadget are true to its Back to the Future namesake, just above the water. Look at that.
Marty McFly didn't have one of those.
My goodness. Now, it gives you more speed and forward propulsion than the height you get from the original flyboard. Yeah, think about Marty McFly. He never got that kind of height. Now, you may be wondering, how does it work? Well, actually, it's a basic watercraft that free floats on the water. But here's the kicker. It sucks up water from whichever body of water you're in through that hose you see back there. And then the water that's sucked up gets passed through a jet engine and spewed out. And as you can see, there's some really cool stuff that they're doing. Soaring through the sky, over and under the water. It looks pretty incredible. I've seen this video countless times already, and even now, I can scarcely believe it to be real.
You're gonna feel like you're on top of the world if you're on one of those things, right? Ooh.
You know, I think you really have to know what you're doing. Could you imagine what would happen if you went underwater? You
if
couldn't
you're as
find your way back
clumsy as
up?
I am, that's not a good deal. But watching this video, it got me thinking. People say dolphins are so smart because they can do tricks with hula hoops and have a couple of words. They don't even have flying jet hoverboards, so I think humans win in this case.
I don't think they need one, though.
All right, let's move on to our next story. We all know K-pop. We all know what a hit it's been in the past few years. And we also know what flash mobs are. So that begs the question, what happens when you take these two very interesting ingredients and put them together? Let's have a look. Now we start off here at a plaza in Strasbourg, France. It's very romantic, of course, and people are just going about their business. Now get ready for this. We have a guy walking to the center of the square. A couple of his buddies join him, and they lead off into a dance. Now it's been a while since we've had a flash mob video here on Viral Feed, and this one is pretty special. I've listened to the music for a bit, and I gotta say, you've probably heard this one before. It's none other than the K-pop song by Big Bang star Taeyang. It's called Ringa Linga, and any K-pop fan from around the world, I'm sure, is aware of this song. Now, as the flash mob grows, so too does the crowd watching it. You can see more and more people getting involved. Now, according to the Post, this group worked for, get this, 10 months. 10 months. It chokes me up just to say it. 10 months to get this flash mob performance together. Now, K-pop dance flash mobs at this particular plaza in Strasbourg started back in 2011, making this number 4. That makes me think I can't wait to see what they're going to come up with next year, because there's so much cool stuff happening in Korean music, and these guys obviously know what they're doing with the dance moves. It's just a huge, elaborate production, and you know, flash mobs have always amazed me, but I love seeing it with that K-pop element thrown in there. It's pretty, I think, pretty impressive.
They were pretty impressive,
Can the three of us do some flash mob? Does that constitute?
I think we missed out on the Harlem Shake, right?
Yeah,
I think
we
next
really wanted that.
I think we're going to have to do something together.
Again, I've said this before, I am the world's clumsiest guy, so don't count me in on that one. All right, let's move on to our next story. It has something to do with spicy foods. Now, here in Korea, in the heat, when it gets really, really hot, we have this concept called 이열치열, and that basically means to beat the heat with more heat. And sometimes that'll involve spicy foods that have actually been shown scientifically to help cool your body down. In this next video, though, we have a foreigner in Seoul who tried this particular method. Did it work for him? Well, let's have a look at the video and check.
먹어도 매워요. 한 조각 먹어도. 이만큼 먹었는데.
Now, which dish are they talking about? It's tonkatsu, a fried pork cutlet dish. I think it's a spicy makeover at this restaurant. It's so spicy, it's called Kill You Dead Tonkatsu. Now, this young guy is from the US. He's here for grad school, and he decided that he was brave enough to take the Kill You Dead Tonkatsu challenge. And he thought, how bad could it be? Well, as the clock starts, pretty bad, as we'll see in a moment. Now, this restaurant is in the neighborhood of Sindebangdong, and it's famous for this particular challenge. If you can't eat the order within 20 minutes, you have to pay double the price. Now, even those with the penchant for spicy food can barely swallow 2 bites, so you can imagine how much hurt he's feeling. And you see the people in the restaurant, they're getting behind him. Can he do it?
Is that going to help?
Is that going to help? Oh, the clock's running down. Oh no, he had to give up.
It must have been pretty bad because he looks like he's in some pain. So after some milk to down the fire in his stomach, he said this.
추천해 줄게. 매운탕 가서 신대방에서 먹지 마세요.
I know Chinju's pretty good with spicy
As a
food. You
friend,
want to take on that challenge?
Yeah, I shall sometimes. 신대방도
So we'll have a Shindebang lunch date?
Yes.
The whole camera crew will follow her.
I did
There
need
you
to
go.
ask you about this because I do have sources that have told me that Jinju is the resident hot food connoisseur.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't look just delicious though. That looks excruciating. Come on, you have to inform us. What is the appeal
But
of
some
something
spicy
like that?
food, time to time, is a great stress reliever, I would say.
It actually tastes good once you get used to it. But Jinju, you know that the
Kimchi
couple
is
ramen
as far
that we
as I'll
had,
go,
right? All right, well,
kimchi.
then we're not going to do it. We're going to watch her do it, have a camera crew and see what she does with it, right?
Alrighty.
So it has a 20-minute time limit, so it's basically a challenge. So what do you get if you do it?
It's actually amazing. If you get it done in 5 minutes, which as we can see from the video is more or less impossible, you can eat at this particular restaurant free for 6 months.
5
There you
minutes?
go. That's
No, I
plenty of
can't do
incentive
it.
right there.
But,
Go
okay,
Jinju.
if you think that's too much, 10 minutes, if you get it done in 10 minutes, it's actually free 돈가스 for 1 month. And if you go over the 20-minute time limit, unfortunately, you do have to pay double the price. Still only about $15 US though, so if you're up for the challenge, that's something worth considering.
All right.
One of many ways to get through the heat. Personally, I think I'll prefer the flying hoverboards a little bit. Alrighty, getting on to our final story. It's about a couple of buddies who decided to take a backpacking trip, but it's a very special backpacking trip indeed. They just decided to up and go somewhere, and they had no plans except for their final destination. Let's see if you can guess that destination before we get to the end of the clip. Let's have a look. Now, one day in July, two buddies spontaneously decided to leave on a trip together. There was no itinerary, nothing was decided beforehand except that they keep moving east. Now, as you can see, it wasn't always easy. They had some tough times, some tiresome times. But on the whole, it looked like it was mostly a lot of fun. And what I really like about this video is that look how upbeat they are. It's not just something that they're forcing themselves to go through. They're traveling throughout the country and they're having a great time. Now, as we move on, we find them at Ulleungdo Island. But it's not, again, their final destination. They were here as part of a means to an end. They had to pass by Ulleungdo before reaching their final destination. Is that enough of a hint? Can you guys guess what it might be?
We just saw it.
Where are they going? There you go. It's Korea's easternmost islands, or the Dokdo Islets. And look, they made it there. The two friends posted that one day they were talking about the whole political issue of the Dokdo Islets, and they decided, you know, we can't really talk about this unless we've been there in person to experience it for ourselves. So that's what they did. They just packed a couple of backpacks and they set off, and I gotta say, I have the utmost respect for these guys because it's easier said than done. We'd all love, you know, sometimes to pack a backpack and go out somewhere, but to actually follow through and do that, I thought those guys are an inspiration. I think they're pretty cool.
Inspirational and meaningful as well.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good way to get the Monday started with that sort of inspiration. Sadly, though, that is all the time we have today for Viral Feed. I've been Simon O. Ciao for now.
And it is time to catch that singer, the R&B singer, try his hand at R&B. There are some similar elements to R&B and trot.
Trot? Have you tried trot?
No, it's a very difficult genre, though, as we'll find out. And Chamina joins us with more on that. Good morning.
Good morning. You might be familiar with today's guest, actually. He appeared on Korea Today back in February, I believe. And this was when he was, and he still is, of course, the main vocalist of the multicultural musical troupe Montant. And that translates into Korean Mongdang, which means everything or all together. So that's when he was featured then. But now he has another interest now. He wants to try his hand at learning trot. And as you know, the R&B genre that he's familiar with and the trot genres, they're very different. So let's see how he does. Tantan is a cross-cultural vocal troupe made up of members from 9 different countries, and today's guest of honor is the main vocalist of the group, Erick Christian Robles. His request was to learn to sing the unique Korean music genre of trot, and there was a specific reason why.
And every time I joined the contest, I never had the chance to get first place, always in second or third. Then I realized, how come it's like that? Then my friend, who happens to sing a trot song, always get the first place. Then I got the chance to learn trot songs. Trot music is really jolly and entertaining, and I think it's really interesting. And I'm really looking forward to learn trot music.
Song selection, genre selection.
With that said, in order to learn trot, we asked Erick to join us at a studio in Seoul. And he got to meet his trot teacher there. It was none other than the rising trot star, Park Woo-yoon. He puts on a good show, as you can see.
They'll cut your barbecue for you too.
저는 트롯 너무 배우고 싶어요.
배우고 싶다고?
네.
Before learning to sing, the teacher must determine your natural abilities.
네, 알겠습니다.
동요 아는 노래 있어요?
곰새마리.
곰새마리?
The most elementary of children's songs.
Okay.
Surely he's not going to ask.
트로트 창법으로 한번 곰새마리를 불러봐요.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yep, that's exactly what he wanted.
곰새마리가 한 집이 있어.
Okay, good.
That didn't sound right.
이 곰새마리를
Okay, now the teacher's turn.
트로트로 부르려면 곰새마리가 한 집에 있어 엄마 곰 애기 곰
So that's how the trot version's supposed to sound.
It's the cocky.
그러면
Park Woo-yoon got ready for today's lesson, and he knew exactly where to start.
액센트 알죠?
Step 1, focus on accents. The singer has to be able to adjust their accents, to play with their accents, get a feel for where to go heavy and where to go light. This is a major trait of the Korean trot genre.
정말 중요하게 작용하는 포인트거든요. 그냥 밋밋하게 여기에 있어도 당신뿐이고 이거보다 여기에 있어도 당신뿐이고
여기 있어도 당신뿐이고.
Okay, a bit awkward, but it's not too bad, right?
이러면 이제 액센트가 생기죠.
Now, conveying emotions behind the lyrics. It's difficult for someone, though, who's not a native Korean speaker.
이 노랫말을 다 알 필요는 없어요. 하지만 이 느낌이 어떤 느낌인지는 다 알죠.
How was Erick going to make the words come alive?
돈 없어도 당신뿐이고 이렇게 맛을 줄 수 있는
For this part, he was
부분이
attempting
바로
to
이
convey
부분이에요.
the desperation and hope in the singer's
돈
voice.
없어도
돈 없어도.
이러니까 재미없잖아.
He's not quite there yet.
조금 어려워.
어려워요. 진짜 돈 없는 사람은 엄청 절박해요, 사람이. 아휴, 돈이 없어도 이런 느낌.
Did that explanation help?
시작. 아이고, 돈이. 자, 그러죠.
Erick continues practicing his emotional delivery.
Oh, you're getting better. Or maybe not.
Practice makes perfect.
I wish I had that kind of determination.
You're gonna regret saying that, Jimmy.
All right, step 3 now, a dazzling performance. And by dazzling, we mean literally.
오 마이 갓, 진짜 이렇게 입어요? 너무
멋있어요?
반짝반짝 진짜 너무 멋있다. 무대에서 진짜 잘 보여.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the traits of many trot singers, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
flashy dress, yes, the outfit.
Right, pretty standard when it comes to trot performances.
나와.
And he was definitely feeling the vibe after donning the clothes. The suit and scissors are actually props used by Park Bo-yoon in his own performances. And as Park demonstrated how to use the scissors with the beat, Erick joined right in.
카메라를 잡아먹을 듯이.
Wow, he knows how to do it.
It's good, though, that Erick already had a history of performing publicly and a musical background with Montan, so it was very helpful today.
I think he's pleased with his protege.
What's with the scissors?
Learning a trot song is not really easy. It needs more passion to be able to experience and appreciate trot music in Korea.
After the lesson, we saw Erick next at a traditional market near his home.
You always hear trot music blasting in traditional markets.
Yeah, now that you think about it. Now, towards the middle of this marketplace, they were putting up a temporary stage, and you can guess what's coming.
Oh, he's getting attention.
It was time for Erick to test his trot skills. We were putting on an impromptu trot show. This would serve as solid proof whether or not we had helped him learn the basics. And now there was actually a special lesson or a special reason he chose this location for his mini show. It was whenever he felt lonely and homesick, the merchants here were kind, treated him like family. But were they happy with his performance? Everyone seemed genuinely pleased with Erick's show.
너무 고맙죠. 너무 기특하고 너무너무 깜짝 놀랐어요. 너무 잘해서.
I hope they love my simple gift. I learned the song really for just a few days. And even though I forget some lyrics, I hope they really love it and enjoy. And they will remember that I've been here in Daesan-Sijang to perform for them.
All right.
Well, if you can get the ajumas to dance with
Yep.
to the song,
And
you've nailed
succeeded.
it, right? Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Props to him, right? He's wearing blue and you're wearing blue, and you said that you might have wanted to try that, but we won't make you do that here. But
maybe a duo performance in the future, possibly.
yeah, he really does have very bravery. I mean, he just out there practiced one day and was able to go out there and perform in front of an audience.
Right, and it didn't come without hard work, of course. He was telling our staff that he practiced a lot and had a couple sleepless nights. So, of course, practice really does make perfect here in this example, as we saw with Erick. And he now says that instead of listening to his beloved R&B music, he has become a lover of trot music as well. And he wants to perfect that. So that has become a goal for him. And he really fell in love with the emotions portrayed in the music genre, specifically in trot, of course.
It was quite interesting how he got a really a warm welcome at the marketplace. A lot of people treated him like a boy next door.
Exactly, and that was why he wanted to put on his special mini performance there specifically. It was because many of the merchants there, he would run into them every day and not necessarily buy anything, but just walking by on a daily basis, going to and from home, he would run into them and they would ask him how his day is going or give him just some snacks or something. So he really felt at home there, and he wanted to put on a performance at a place where he felt the most comfortable in Korea.
Became a rock star.
Yeah,
he did it overnight. Trot star.
Yeah, exactly.
Minor correction there.
So it must have been a very memorable experience for him to further connect with the people at the marketplace there.
Yeah, absolutely. It became an experience for him to kind of give back to the community, I guess you could say, for giving him so much love, as well as just opening him to this new genre of music. And one of his hobbies, he said, was to break down lyrics and to find out the meaning of lyrics. And the genre of trot music is actually just perfect for that, because it encompasses a wide variety of emotions, from someone's sorrow, joy, and pain, and that's what a lot of Koreans relate to. And they say that the trot genre encompasses or is a part of a Korean's history and emotions.
All right, it really does know how to bring that. Do you know that when we talk about our traditional Korean style of singing, chang, we actually talk about that word han, or the pain. That actually, the elements of that are in trot too, but trot kind of breaks it down in a more funner, upbeat way.
And the rhythm and the melody is really addictive and easy to follow, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that because a lot of trot singers in the past, or ajashis or ajumas, are like older men and older women, but these days it seems like the trend is in the younger generation.
Right. Just until about the 2000s, I would say, trot music would automatically be associated with the older generations. But in the beginning of 2000s, we saw famed singer Chang Yun-jung, for instance, who introduced a modern version of trot, and that was a huge hit. Then she was followed by artists like Park Hyun-bin here, who brought a little cool to trot, as some people refer to him being. And then there's also the charming trot act by singer Hong Jin-young. So those are just a few modern versions of trot that have really picked up the speed here today.
Wait, so are we gonna give it a try?
I hear a little bit of R&B element from him still.
Good try, though. A nice try.
All right, we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. See you next week.
Will do.
All right, well, that's just about it for this edition of Korea Today.
And we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.